Dell had made a pretty significant announcement where they had told their employees, look, if you want to be remote, 100% remote, that's fine. However, you will not be eligible for a promotion. You won't be eligible for a job change. You won't be. It kind of was. It was basically a threat, a bit of a ultimatum. Ultimatum is probably a better term for it. So this happened a while back, which was really disappointing coming from Dell, who just a few years ago had said any company that needs to force its employees to come in, should ask them, look in the mirror, something like that. But anyway, so Dell had significantly made this change. But what was really interesting, and the reason that I brought this up this week, was Dell's employees responded. That is for sure. And Dell's employees responded in droves by saying, fine, that's what you want to do. We'll take your offer. And over 50%, it was like 55% or something, said, we'll take the deal. And they signed the paperwork and said, great. Okay, well, we're staying here. We're forever remote. You can't now say anything else about it. And now you can't promote us or anything like that. So I think there's a couple things that when I saw this story, and you may hear me say this and have your ideas of how you think I'm responding to it. I actually have mixed feelings about the whole situation because I actually think the whole thing is just a tragedy. And you'll see why as I get into it. But, on one hand, I say go for it, employees. I think good for them. And I think it speaks to the fact that any company who does not think flexibility, now, granted, this one in particular was remote work, but it's not necessarily remote work. It really is flexibility because if you look into Dell's policy and what they were doing was it wasn't just, hey, remote or a nice flexible hybrid option or anything like that. It really was you either sign this ultimatum deal or we literally are going to be checking in on you and making sure you're showing up to the office X number of hours a week. So there wasn't really any middle ground. It was either kind of draconian oversight or total remote flexibility, which I think is unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to go to this one extreme or the other option. So I think that to me in the just from the beginning and the onset, to me was just the sad part about the whole ultimatum from Dell. Not only was it the fact that they were really a pinnacle and known for their focus on flexibility and the fact they fell so far from that, but then the fact it's like, not only did you fall from that, but you bought into this whole false narrative that it's like, you have to be this or you have to be this. And so for companies listening to this, or if you're an employer or a manager or things, if you're still buying into this idea that flexibility means complete like lack of control or oversight and no guardrails whatsoever, you just let your people run free, or you have to have this just lockdown over managed way of run, there is so much more room in the middle. And I don't know what I can do more to try and help companies and leaders understand that it's not this or that. So to me, that was unfortunate. But when I looked at the employees responding, I'm like, well, clearly companies who don't take this seriously better take note, because let me tell you, from an HR standpoint, over half of your employees going, fine, we take this deal, and now being locked into this thing where you can't mobilize or promote or whatever. Because the second you do, you're going to get, somebody's going to sue and it's going to make an absolute mess for you. So I actually have a lot of, because I'm confident, having been in enough companies, that this was one of those things where it was rushed to market as kind of a, hey, they're never going to push back on this. And I won't mention the company I was at when this happened once, but this happened at a company I was at once where they said, we need everybody to move to this location. And so we're going to quick throw together a deal and be like, you got to move to this location or we're going to, terminate you. And similar to the Dell thing, just again, from a leadership standpoint, this is not a good move to pull on your employees, to put them in an ultimatum, gun to your head, do this or else move. I've seen this backfire so many times. So that's what happened here with Dell, is they gave them an ultimatum, held a gun to their head and said, you're going to be in an office 3 days a week under all these rules, or fine, you can have what you want because we need you here, but then you're never going to get promoted or mobilized. And the employees said, okay, we'll play your game. Spin the chamber. I'll play. And again, I saw this firsthand with another company where they were in a rush. They thought they needed to do something. And so they pushed it through without thinking the long term implications. And in the company I was at, I remember they said, you need to move here. And if you don't move here by this date, we're going to terminate your employment. And in that instance, over 90% of the people said, we'll take your deal. And the company ended up in this position where they went, wait, what? We weren't thinking you were actually going to take us up on this. And that company I was at, I remember it was a mad scramble because they lost their entire marketing team. I mean, the whole marketing team just vaporized overnight because it was like, well, oh, you mean you're going to take the work through date and the package? And over 9 out of 10 said, yes, we will. Thank you. And as any company or any leader knows, once a person's decided to move on, they may be there, but lights are on and nobody's home. And I think Dell's going to be in a real situation now where they're going to go, well, now what do we do? We've got all these employees who are remote that unless we just come back and go, we're sorry and completely eat crow on this, which I have yet to see companies do a good job of that, they're stuck. They're stuck with this. And then when it comes to, well, what happens if we need some leader on a team quits and the best person for the job is the remote employer, the whole team's remote, and now they don't have a leader and we can't even promote somebody because it's going to be really messy for them. And so I hope this is a warning to organizations, a very public warning. This is not a good position to put your employees in. And you may think, oh, they'll never. I have seen countless times companies get completely blown back on this. Now, the part though that I would say to employees that you need to be really careful of, because stories like this, and I know I probably have plenty of people who are on the employee side of this who might be going, yeah, go get them, Dell. I also don't share that sentiment, in that I think employees, when the power pendulum swings on the employee side, you can get the rah rah, and employees can suddenly get an over exaggerated sense of their worth and their value. And you can start to get cocky and think, hey, now we're untouchable. They're never going to do anything to me. And I really hope, again, for the Dell employees, I hope they take this with humility and, don't start kind of strutting their stuff, because what can happen is, and I've seen this too, is the company will hit back in ways they weren't expecting. And so employees can be like, yeah, see, we're untouchable. They need us so much. And then all of a sudden you'll see Dell come in and go, well, you know what? We just laid you all off and we replaced you with AI agents. And this kind of stuff has happened. I've watched it play out. It does not end well. And it really goes back to people just being humble and coming to the table and going, hey, look, we made a mistake. Like, let's figure this out like adults and figure out what we do to move this forward. Cause it's not going to be pretty, I don't think. A company where half of your employees you cannot promote or mobilize, that is a nightmare for stuff. That is a nightmare for a company. And they are going to have to do something. And that's my concern with this situation, is what are they going to do in response to this? Because you can't run a company where you literally cannot move employees or promote them legally without just massive lawsuits. And so how Dell's going to respond and what they're going to do, it's going to be very interesting. And so if anything, if you're a Dell employee, keep your head down, be a good worker, be a great employee, show them that, hey, us doing this wasn't a revolt against you. It was because we know how to get our job done and we're committed to you as the organization, and make space for them to come back and go, you know what, maybe we overreacted and let's solve this. And I really hope it comes to a peaceable end, because it could also go really sideways. And so if you're a company, don't ever put yourself in this position. But if you're a employee on this, don't overassume your value either, because a lot of the work that many people do can be replaced and isn't as critical as we'd like to think. And the company will move forward. And I can say firsthand, so a story I'll share with this where I learned my lesson the hard way once, in that I was in a position, I was doing really good work. I let it get to my head. I thought I was untouchable, and I started behaving in ways that, I'm not proud of looking back on it. And it's not like I did anything unethical, but I got cocky. And at one point, the company said, "Yeah, you're not really as critical as you think you are." And it ended in me leaving the company. And I remember going, "Well, you're never gonna be able to operate without me." And they did just fine when I left. And that was a big dose of humble pie. Now, granted, I ended up humbling myself and going back and acknowledging I made a mistake and saying, "You know what, I totally overestimated my value and whatever." And I had a conversation with the team and they brought me back. But I was a different person after that. And so, regardless of what side you sit on these kinds of things, a heavy dose of humility and a willingness just to work together will serve everybody well. So I'm interested to see how this continues to play out.